Hi, I'm Jarrett, and welcome to the prologue of the Dirty 30, a 30-day motorcycle trip in my 30th year on a motorcycle design that's well over 30 years old and has continued since the 1950s. Today I want to speak about the what, why, where, and who. What the trip is, what my purpose of the trip is, the location plans or where I'm going, and the people who have inspired me along the way. If you don't care to hear all of this prologue and my thought process for the trip itself, be sure to check out my last video where I take you through the magnificence and the magic of the Natchez Trace. It's seriously a magical place and it isn't talked about very much. So with that, let's get into it. Number one, so what is this trip about? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the Dirty 30 is roughly a 30-day trip across the United States in my 30th year. I'm 30 years old, where I will mostly sleep on the ground and take limited showers, and that's where the dirty comes in. I'm riding the Dirty 30 on a fuel-injected 2013 Triumph Bonneville, a British modern classic designed to look nearly identical to its original design in the 1950s. I will sleet and eat on only what I can carry on my motorcycle, which isn't very much considering this is by no means a touring bike, but that is what makes it part of the fun. Number two, why? Why would I go without pay from my job for a month, sleep on the ground, endure the weather and elements on a bike not really designed to go on a tour? Well, in the words of a fellow storyteller, Some Guy Rides, he says it this way. He says, and I quote, "Adventure is difficult to come by in the modern world. Everything has been discovered, mapped, and Instagrammed to death already. So sometimes you have to add some elements to make it interesting." Ted Simon, who circumnavigated the world in 1973 on a Triumph Tiger, which was built off the Triumph Bonneville platform, said it this way. He said, "There's no trick to go around the world these days. You can pay a lot of money and fly around it non-stop in less than 48 hours. But to know it, to smell it, and feel it in between your toes, you have to crawl. There is no other way. Not flying, not floating. You have to stay on the ground and swallow the bugs as you go. Then, the world is immense." Certainly a trip like this can be done in a car, but to another famous motorcyclist, Robert Pirsig, who wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, in a car you are always in a compartment. You're a passive observer. But on a motorcycle, you're completely in contact with it all. You're in the scene, not just watching it, and the sense of presence is overwhelming. If you've been on a motorcycle, you know that you hear, smell, see, and feel things differently than you would never feel in an automobile, or as the motorcycle world calls them, cages. However, I really want to take Pirsig's thought to a whole nother level, because while thousands of motorcycles travel around the United States very successfully, most do so on bikes that are designed to tour. Motorcycles like the Harley-Davidson Road Glide, Indian Roadmaster, BMW 1200 series, and Honda Goldwings. These big bikes have tall wind fairings, high-capacity fuel tanks, and very large engines designed for torque throughout their rev range. Certainly these bikes are very comfortable and very capable, but frankly, I find them a bit uninteresting. A good story always has conflict and great challenges. Thus, I will be riding this trip on a mostly stock 2013 Bonneville, a British motorcycle designed to look nearly identical to its design in 1950, featuring zero wind protection, a rock-hard church pew or surfboard seat, a small displacement air-cooled engine with a very small 3-gallon tank. But good stories always come from bad ideas, right? So if you want to know more about how I modified my Triumph to be more comfortable for the long haul, check out my next video where we'll go through some of those modifications. Ultimately, I'm doing this trip because life is short, and it typically gets busier and faster with time. So before it does, I want to be deliberate and proactive about completing a huge life bucket item, because there are only so many tomorrows. Finally, I really owe it to my 10-year-old self, who looked up to my 30-year-old self. I want to make him proud. Number 3, where? Where am I going? However, to answer that, we must start with a different number. 4 is a powerful number. There are 4 Gospels in the New Testaments, 4 sides to a square, 4 seasons of the year, and 4 dimensions of physics. In Claudius Ptolemy's Tetrabiblos, or 4 books, written in the 2nd century, Ptolemy unites his interest with astrology and geography to outline astrological associations of what he calls his inhabited world, with the logic given in the biblical traditions of the 4 corners of the earth, today found referenced in our Bible in verses like Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12. However, Ptolemy extends his argument and attributes these 4 corners of the earth, or what later astrologists would call 4 cardinal directions, with 4 corresponding triplicities of the zodiac, called so because each of the 4 triplicities is associated with 3 signs of the zodiac each, forming a triangle. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius complete the first triangle, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces the second, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn the third, and Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius the fourth. While Ptolemy references these 4 triplicities to the corners of the earth, later Western astrology and the pagan tradition would refer to these triplicities as the classical elements of the earth: fire, water, earth, and air, and assign them different cardinal directions depending on what hemisphere you were located on. So why am I telling you all of this? Partly because I think it's interesting, and mostly because I'm a huge fan and nerd of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Water, earth, fire, air.
The Dirty 30 film will be a 4-part series, with each part of the trip corresponding to the primary cardinal direction and its representative element traditionally assigned in the Northern Hemisphere, since that's where I will be riding. Thus, without further delay, I present the 4 parts of the Dirty 30 film with their cardinal direction and element. Part 1 of the series is fire and starts in the south. The first leg of the trip will start on the warm coastline of Texas, wandering through the desert of South and West Texas, into the Guadalupe National Mountains, to the Chiricahua National Wilderness, saguaros of Arizona, and ending in California's Mojave Desert ecosystem. Just as the butterflies, birds, and whales move south for warmer habitats, so this will be the warmest part of my journey. Parts of this country have been well known to be over 110 degrees in peak times. Fire is the appropriate element of the south. Part 2 is water and corresponds to the west. Just as many individual droplets make a river, so have the thousands of people who have settled in California and Oregon wanting the better life created a rich tapestry of a melting pot of coastal living. The water leg of the trip focuses on the coastline of the Pacific Coast Highway, also known as Highway 1, riding perpendicular to the largest and deepest body of water in the world, the Pacific Ocean. Part 3 is Earth, and its direction is north. The north is the land of my birthplace, Idaho, with its magnificent mountains and peaks. Earth represents stability and groundedness, as do my parents, siblings, grandparents, uncles, and aunts, who still live in the Rocky Mountains today. Just as the north is the opposite of the south, so this will be the coldest part of my trip, as some of these mountain ranges are known to have snow well through May and June. Part 3 will take us through Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado, meandering up and down Earth's Rocky Mountain peaks of the Lewis Range, the Tetons, and the San Juan Mountains, among others. The final episode, Part 4, is air and the direction of east, because most generic air currents blow east, at least in the United States. Air is the breath of life, and east is the direction of new ideas and fresh starts. Just as the sun indicates a new day each time it rises in the east. The east will certainly be a fresh start for my family and I, as this leg of the trip I won't just be taking the motorcycle, but my family and our belongings as well, as we move from Texas to DC. I will end my Dirty 30 trip on the beaches of the East Coast, breathing in the fresh coastal air. Number 4, who? Finally, there are a few people that have given me such inspiration to accomplish such a monumental task. Number 1, Anne France d'Hauteville, who was the first woman, she was French, to circumnavigate the world in 1973 on a Kawasaki 125. My personal favorite, in terms of motorcyclists, is Elspeth Beard, who was the first English woman motorcyclist to circumnavigate the world in 1982 on a BMW R60. If you want a fantastic introduction to books about traveling full-time on a motorcycle, check out Elspeth Beard's book called Lone Rider. It's an absolute page-turner. I could not put it down, and you will not believe what she's been through. She is amazing and an absolute hero of mine. Finally, I want to thank my wife. Without her, none of this would be possible because she's paying her bills while I make no income for a month. But more importantly, she's always believed in me since day one. This journey has been a fantastic 2-year planning process with countless hours and resources towards storyboarding, videography, editing, motorcycle camping, motorcycle skills, and safety gear. And Emily has been so supportive from the very first day, and she's my number one fan and my number one friend. Seriously, you're the best, Em. I love you. So that's it. If you are interested in more of my Dirty 30 trip, I will be doing 2 more videos shortly. Like I said, the first one I'll be mentioning the modifications on my Triumph to make it more touring friendly. And the second one I'll be making about all the gear that makes all this trip possible to eat, sleep, camp, all of that. So until then, be sure to check out my next 4 videos, 4-part series, which will be called 9,000 Miles on a Triumph Bonneville. Thanks. See you next time.